Number 2.
I've been a volunteer firefighter for a couple of years. When you become a firefighter, you either work on engines and put out fires, or with the ladder and actually run into buildings to save people. Normally when you're new, they keep you stuck on engine work before they let you move to ladder work. But I got lucky and they let me move over to join ladder 29 and start doing rescue work. Normally we just get medical calls, so when we do get a fire, it's a big deal. One night, we got called to a structure fire in an older part of town where the buildings were wall to wall. The fire, which had started in one house, had spread to 2 others by the time it was reported to us, since most houses were abandoned. We got on the scene and immediately had the engine start working on the original house, while the ladder split up between the other 2. I followed my lieutenant and another firefighter into one of the houses, and we searched but didn't find a sign of anyone. Then, over the sound of the flames, I heard a faint cry for help. I bolted away in search of it, looking to play the hero, coming to a door that led to the basement we completely missed. I radioed back to the guys outside.
Ladder 29 irons. We've got people trapped down here.
My lieutenant and the senior firefighter both were scolding me for running off, but they heard the voices too. We took the axe we had and started chopping down the door. It must have been incredibly thick because we were taking some pretty good swings at it, and it still stood. Eventually, we got to the point where we would be able to bust it down, screaming back to the people we heard that we would get them out. But that's when we heard a crash, and that door, which had been so ready to come down, it wouldn't budge. We knew what that meant. The house caved in behind it. We could hear the voices start to scream, like they were being burned, alive. It was the most awful, blood-curdling sound you could ever imagine. We tried so hard to get through, but it was useless. We were ordered over the radio to get out of there and head back outside in case more of the house started to collapse. And I knew that meant whoever was down there, we were leaving to burn, alive. I went outside and sat down on the truck and started sobbing into my gloves. I felt so helpless. My whole life, I dreamt of being a hero, and when I had the opportunity, I failed. I felt like I should have saved whoever it was, or died trying, and we backed out instead. Granted, if there was nothing we could do, there was no sense in us getting killed too. But damn it, the guilt was killing me. A few days later, when I came back for another shift, I was told the people downstairs, they were teenagers who went down there for whatever reason. They were so badly burned, they were unidentifiable. I won't go into the gory details, but I will say the case pictures we submitted, they haunt me to this very day. I still volunteer today, and I've tried my best to move past that incident, as every firefighter has things like this happen to them. It's part of the job. But when I go to bed at night, I still hear those screams begging for my help, the screams of kids forever etched into my brain.
Number 1.
This happened about 4 years ago. I was in a wildland fire crew in southern Oregon, and we were dispatched to an area known as Rogue River, a fire in a place called Dead Indian Mountain. It was my first taste of night operations. We arrived and went to work directly on the fire's uncontrolled edge. The wilderness setting was an old growth forest with huge trees spread apart. The ground resembles what you see on the moon, a bunch of white ash. As the fire burned, it ate up all the underbrush, opening up the woods on the fireside, making it dance with shadows and tricks of light. Our crew controlled that edge of the fire for the remainder of that week. It was about a mile-long handrail we had dug down into a holler butting up to a cliff. And with the fire under control, the job shifts to mop-up, where we dig around and put out the flames and embers about 100 feet from the line. It can be pretty boring, so we're taught not to be complacent and to keep good heads up. A standard fire crew has 20 guys in it, and ours was split up at about 3 to 2 groups of 10. The other crew stayed at the top and prepared the top end. After the third night, people began joking about hearing thumps and seeing rocks being thrown at them through the darkness. And the next night, I got my taste of what they were joking about. From the side of the trail the fire was on, a rock landed right next to me. It was kind of a big one, and as it hit the ash, it landed with a silent thud. I had been milling around in the dark, digging embers out of the ground, and realized that the closest headlamp was about 50 feet away from me. I was thinking, very funny guys. So I went to the bottom of the trail alone, leaving my pack and helmet as they had reflectors that would give away my position. I took my tool and snuck off into the shadows, letting the flames from the background light my descent down the hill. I'm gonna catch whoever's messing with me. I was not a rookie, and I've made a living in the woods my whole adult life. At that point, I was about 26 and very headstrong, and in very good shape. I was damn good at my job, and I loved it. Most of the people on my half of the crew were young rookies, except the squad boss and one other guy. His name was Jason. Jason was new to the Fireys, but had been a logger and cut trees before. He was in his late 30s, had a scratchy raspy voice, and was a natural leader among the young 18 and 19-year-olds. He brought a bad mouth and sometimes a bad attitude to the scene, almost a "I've been to prison, so fuck you" attitude. I figured it was him in some weird struggle for dominance against me, as I had a few years more experience and certifications on him and got more responsibility. I thought that it was him. I knew I could sneak up to each little group unnoticed. I started at the bottom of the trail, and I could hear rustling behind me. Wondering how someone got the jump, I froze until it stopped, and I was sure it was gone. I guessed it was my squad boss sneaking around monitoring our work from the dark. That is actually normal, believe it or not. Leaving the edge of the holler, I started up into the woods paralleling the trail. I loved how the ash made my large frame move so quietly. It was awesome to see the shadows of the trees dance all around me. It was like nothing was static, an ever-changing cast of shadows dancing the night away all around me. As I caught my first glimpse of the group working near the bottom, I walked just next to the 3 people. I have to say, I enjoyed being so sneaky as I listened to them just feet away from where they worked. They were talking about hearing knocks and rocks being thrown and seemed kind of nervous. I could hear Jason badgering the 2 young men, but in his own raspy voice. I wondered if that is what made him feel at ease. I then heard him say,
"It does kind of feel like we're being watched though."
I didn't know if this was to scare the rookies or if he meant it, but instead of looking in my direction, he looked across the other side of the handrail and nodded. I moved on before I was caught. The next group was hard at work, and no one was talking much. They were just doing what they were supposed to be. I left them and headed back up to my group at the top, when I noticed a lone headlamp on the line moving down. The squad boss was checking groups and would have noticed that I wasn't in mine. I let him know what I was doing so he wouldn't shit when he didn't see me down the hill. I actually scared him, which to me was very unusual. This guy was small, but he was an ex-Marine and was as tough as they come. He just collected some info on the groups and I told him I thought I heard someone in the holler. I asked if he was down there earlier. I knew he couldn't have been, and he dismissed it immediately. We parted ways and I snuck up on my little squad, and of course scared them shitless also. But they were upset and telling me that they heard noises above them and in the shadows all around. I reassured them it was normal, even though at this point even I was getting spooked. Dead Indian Mountain indeed. The next night the joking was amped up and focused on the dudes that were willing to admit that they heard things. We arrive and our orders are to patrol the line. We get to the bottom of the line and near the holler. A rookie, our youngest guy, He was sent about a football field down into the holler to collect some hose and a fitting bag. We all posted up and waited for him. After about 20 minutes, we're all kind of like, what the fuck is taking so long? He screams very loudly like a woman about 50 feet above us on the green side of the hill. We heard him running as he burst through a bush above us. He explained that he was being followed and he was sure something was down there with him. He heard some thumping and growls, and you could see the fear in his young face. His fear was very unsettling, and he was hyperventilating. He dropped the fittings bag and hose, but refused to drop his shovel. The night went on and we travelled the line and did our jobs. The kid was calming down, and rather than being mean, everyone was pretty reassuring to him, and the rest of the night, it was uneventful. Looking back on this, I realised that the squad boss had kept us all in 10-man squads instead of smaller groups, with him moving between the three. I think he was noticing that something was strange about this place. It was counterproductive, but he made this choice for the rest of the operation. The next couple of nights, they were also uneventful. We just did shoulder grids up the hill from the holler all night and back down. It seemed that people were forgetting about the noises and eerie feelings. It was the last night. We were pretty sure because the line was pretty inactive. We hiked down and planned to take a break where that kid heard noises. On the way down, about 3/4 of the group were in a line of 10 and hiking at a nice pace. Jason, leading the line, stopped suddenly without a hold the line command. We piled up in confusion as his raspy leathered voice yelled,
What the fuck is that? Don't move, guys. Hold up, there's an animal ahead.
Animals act strangely during a fire, so it's always a good idea to take precautions when dealing with any wild animals, including elk or deer. An elk or deer could easily fuck you up. Remember, firefighters carry about 50 to 65 pounds of gear on them, so running is a pain, let alone fighting anything. It's best to show dominance and scare animals away, for both our sakes. Our lamps panned in the darkness as we were mashed up into a group. Jason then yells,
There it is!
And our lamps landed on a set of green eyes about 20 feet in front of us. And they were fucking huge. Huge. You could make out a large dark massive shape sprint across the line in front of us to the unlit side of the trail. When our lamps found it again, we could make out 3 sets of green eyes. The middle set being about 3 feet taller than the other 2 sets. The middle set was easily 3 feet taller than me, and I'm 6'3". There was chaos as everyone was yelling, and I grabbed a shovel from the guy next to me and began banging on it on my Pulaski, making an awful racket. I was taking the lead as a few others joined in. The shorter sets of eyes dropped straight down and disappeared, but the middle set, it stayed in sight. I was scared shitless, and everyone, all 10 of us, were yelling and banging tools with a few of us approaching the eyes. I got the closest. I'll never forget staring into those green eyes. A part of me wanted to prove superior to the menace, but my heart was pounding so bad, and everyone else, they were behind me. I got the distinct feeling that if I got any closer, I was going to die. I kept going. What is this thing? The whole thing lasted about 3 minutes. Banging of metal tools and yelling. No animal would have stayed put while we threatened it. It refused to move or give any ground. My squad boss ordered us to move on and put a stop to the racket. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes from this thing for a second. Everyone was scared, but some people were trying to say that it was an elk or a bear and that they had seen it. I know they were lying. You could see the fear in their eyes and how quickly they were willing to dismiss it. The squad boss, and I quote, said,
Guys, there are animals in the woods.
Nobody was really comfortable, and we moved up to the top of the line and stayed out by the vans. That was proof that no one wanted to go any further, even the boss. The guys were telling scary stories and recalling what they had seen. At least half of them refused to agree on what they saw. I know damn well what I had seen. I got the closest to it. It was not a deer or a bear or an elk. It was huge and not afraid of humans or fire. When the sun came up, the second half of the crew came and met us by the vans. As I walked over to the crew boss, I noticed footprints around the vans and leading into the burn. I said,
"Hey, look at these."
And when he came over, he stuck his boot into the prints and said something like, "Can't be anything," as he began to smear them all around. I noticed they had toes in them. I tried to tell my boss that, but he just kept spreading them all around. He had to have noticed that they were classic Sasquatch prints. I was shitting my pants. I never saw anything like them. Walking away, I had a strange feeling. I knew I couldn't talk about it with anyone else because I didn't want to sound stupid. I've told the story to a few friends, and I've never been sure if anyone believes me. But I know what I saw. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before or since. I have never hiked alone since. I've seen some strange things in the woods in my 11 years of working there, but never like this. There are things out in the woods that we don't know about or understand. Since then, Jason and we've become good friends. We go drinking, and every once in a while we recall our story, but never with other people. And since then, we went on to another fire crew together and worked together for a few years. But if I could pass on one piece of advice, it would be, never hike alone. Take it from a veteran of the woods. G'day mates, it's be.busta here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video guys. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their stories for us all here, and I hope you're all doing really well. For the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. And as always, keep them coming guys, as this channel relies upon your stories to continue. Also, please do me a favor and just state in your email what your story is about in the description, and also provide me with a short written statement of consent, just so that I can be above board with everything. And also remember to tell me in the email if you would like to remain anonymous, and please change any names if you don't want particular names to be shared. As always guys, it would be awesome if you could like, share, comment and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for updates throughout the week. You can also catch me on my second channel, all of which have links in the description below. Thanks again for always tuning in guys, for all the love and support, and I'll see you mates in the next one.